You have heard this keyboard, even if you have never seen it. A bright piano cuts through a house record. A glassy organ becomes a bass line. A choir opens into a digital universe. Then the same black keyboard supplies drums, strings, bass, and the skeleton of an entire song. The Korg M1 was not the deepest synthesizer of its generation. It was not the most expensive, and it was not the first machine that could sequence music. Yet it became one of the defining instruments of late 80s and 90s pop. Why? Because the M1 did more than sell famous sounds. It sold a new role for the person playing it: composer, arranger, performer, and producer, working alone at one keyboard. This is the story of the king of 90s pop, the rivals in its court, and the birth of the musical workstation. To understand the breakthrough, picture a serious electronic studio in the mid-80s. One synthesizer might provide electric piano. Another handled strings or brass. A drum machine supplied rhythm. A hardware sequencer or an early computer remembered the notes. Effects sat in a rack. A mixer joined the audio. MIDI cables carried instructions from box to box, while floppy disks, tape, and handwritten track sheets kept the system from forgetting itself. Powerful integrated systems already existed. The Fairlight CMI and Synclavier could sample, sequence, and reshape music. But they lived in a price category closer to a professional studio than an ordinary keyboard. Yamaha's QX sequencers could command a network of DX synthesizers and RX drum machines, but the network was still a network. Ensoniq's ESQ1 put a multi-track sequencer inside a playable synthesizer in 1986. Roland's D-20 would also combine an 8-track sequencer, rhythm section, effects, and floppy storage in 1988. So the M1 did not invent every ingredient. Its achievement was integration. Put the right ingredients together, make them approachable, and give musicians sounds they wanted before they had read the manual. Korg released the M1 in 1988 and called it a music workstation. Inside were PCM-based sounds, drum samples, digital effects, performance combinations, an 8-part multi-timbral sound engine, and an 8-track MIDI sequencer. Those numbers describe different things. 8 tracks means 8 lanes of recorded performance data. 8-part multi-timbrality means the sound engine can address 8 instrumental parts. Polyphony is the number of simultaneous voices the machine can produce, and the M1's ceiling was 16 oscillators. A layered program could consume more than one oscillator for a single played note. Tracks, parts, and polyphony are not interchangeable. That limited voice budget sounds tiny today, but the package was coherent. Choose a program for one sound, a combination for layered or split performance, add effects, then move into the sequencer without rebuilding the studio. The M1 was less like buying one spectacular specialist and more like opening a compact production room that already knew what a pop arrangement needed. The factory voicing was Korg's decisive advantage. PCM did not mean the M1 was playing long, pristine modern recordings. Memory was precious. Designers used short samples, loops, attack transients, envelopes, filtering, and effects to create the impression of acoustic instruments and imaginary ones. The opening combination, Universe, was practically a manifesto. Choir, motion, and glittering percussion arriving as one cinematic gesture. Piano 16-foot was bright, compressed, and unmistakably digital. Organ 2 could be played as chords, a stab, or a syncopated bass. Choirs, strings, picked basses, mallets, drums, and strange resonant textures made the keyboard feel larger than its memory. These sounds were not neutral. They had opinions. The piano did not disappear into a dense mix. It announced itself. The organ did not politely imitate a Hammond. it became a new electronic instrument. Universe did not wait for a sound designer to build atmosphere. It delivered atmosphere on the first key. In a period when studio time was expensive, a preset that already sounded finished was not laziness. It was speed, and speed changes which ideas survive. The M1 piano is often judged by the wrong question. Does it fool us into believing a concert grand is in the room? Not really. Its success came from something else. The sharp attack survives club speakers, radio compression, drum machines, vocals, and layers of reverb. It behaves like a rhythmic object as much as a piano. Music Radar identifies that sound with the riff in Black Box's Ride on Time, one of the records that helped define Italo house. The Organ 2 family became inseparable from early 90s house. Producer Stonebridge has described finding the organ sound while rebuilding Robin S.'s Show Me Love. The result was not a realistic organ performance. It was a hook, a bass line, and an identity in one patch. That is the crucial distinction. The M1 did not dominate because every preset was the most faithful imitation available. It dominated because many presets were musically legible in seconds. Producers could hear where the sound belonged. Pop, new jack swing, television music, Eurodance, gospel-influenced house, and commercial studios all needed fast answers. The M1 kept answering. So, who actually used it? The safest answer begins with sounds we can identify and production stories we can trace. Black Box's 1989 hit, Ride on Time, is a defining showcase for the M1 piano. Madonna's Vogue, London Beats, I've Been Thinking About You, and Snap. Rhythm is a Dancer are repeatedly documented in professional keyboard histories as part of the M1 vocabulary. For Robin S.'s Show Me Love, the evidence is unusually personal. Stonebridge has explained that, while rebuilding the remix, he moved to an M1 organ preset and discovered the syncopated bass hook. The M1 was not confined to dance music. On Queen's 1991 album Innuendo, its factory world became part of arena rock. The Universe combination is associated with the opening of Don't Try So Hard. The title track used M1-based orchestration, and Brian May is credited with playing the M1 on The Show Must Go On. Sade's No Ordinary Love is another frequently documented example of its atmospheric side. Artists including Pet Shop Boys, The Cure, Depeche Mode, Joe Zawinul, Mike Oldfield, and others are documented M1 or M1R users, but exact track-by-track claims are often less secure than equipment lists or stage photographs. And one famous story should be removed from the list. The slap bass theme from Seinfeld is often called an M1 preset. Composer Jonathan Wolfe says it was actually built from multiple sampled bass guitars and triggered from a keyboard controller. A sound can resemble the M1 era without coming from an M1. That distinction matters. This instrument has enough real history. It does not need every internet legend. Now we reach the deeper reason the M1 matters. A conventional synthesizer is a source of sound. A workstation is a place where a composition begins to take shape. The M1 sequencer did not record audio. It recorded MIDI events. Which note was played, when it started, how long it lasted, how hard the key was struck, and which controllers moved. That difference made a performance editable after it happened. A musician could correct a wrong note, move events in time, change duration or velocity, copy a passage, transpose a part, or quantize a loose rhythm. The tempo could change while all recorded events remained synchronized. A sound could be replaced after the notes were captured. Patterns could become sections, and sections could help form a song. One person could first act as a drummer, then a bass player, then a pianist, string arranger, brass section, and synthesist. This did not remove the need for singers, acoustic recording, mixing, or collaboration. And the M1 was not a digital audio workstation in the modern sense, but it moved an enormous amount of pre-production into one instrument. The cultural shift is bigger than a specification sheet. The keyboard player was no longer waiting for the rest of the band to reveal the arrangement. The keyboard player could arrive with the arrangement. Imagine an empty song inside the M1. Track 1 receives a drum kit. Record a 4-bar groove. The timing is human and slightly uneven, so quantize moves selected events toward the rhythmic grid. Track 2 receives a bass program. The bass line is almost right, except for one late note. Because the sequencer remembers events rather than audio, that note can be moved without playing the entire take again. Track 3 becomes the famous piano. Record the chord pattern. Copy the best 4 bars into the next section, then change the final chord. Track 4 adds strings. Track 5 carries a melody. The remaining tracks can hold brass, choir, percussion, or a transition effect. Now increase the tempo. Every track follows because the notes are instructions on a musical clock. Change the piano program after recording. The same MIDI events play a new sound. Transpose the string passage. Lower a velocity. Extend a note. Save the arrangement and continue tomorrow. This is the promise of a workstation made visible. Not 16 mythical M1 sequencer tracks, but 8 real ones. Enough to teach a generation that a song could be constructed layer by layer inside the keyboard. There is still a constraint. 8 busy tracks can demand more than 16 oscillators, especially with layered sounds. Arrangement becomes resource management. Use fewer notes, simpler programs, or external MIDI modules. The limitation could be frustrating, but it also encouraged clear parts that left space for each other. The crown needs some scratches. The small display made detailed editing slow. The filters were not designed for the resonant sweeps that analog programmers loved. Sample memory was minuscule by modern standards. The 8-track sequencer was useful, but competitors soon offered more tracks, more notes, floppy-based workflow, and deeper event editing. Most importantly, a complete sequence was not automatically a finished record. Vocals still needed recording. Audio had to reach tape or another recorder. Mixing, equalization, and mastering still mattered. Studio in a keyboard was a powerful direction, not a literal replacement for every studio process. And the same instant presets that made the M1 irresistible eventually made it recognizable to the point of cliché. Once everybody owns the same shortcut, the shortcut becomes the sound of an era. Yamaha's SY77, released in 1989, challenged the M1 with depth. It combined AWM2 sample-based synthesis with advanced FM, digital filters, effects, 16-part multi-timbrality, and a 16-track sequencer. Its maximum polyphony was divided into 16 AWM2 voices and 16 AFM voices. On paper, this is a formidable workstation. Twice the sequencer tracks, hybrid synthesis, a floppy drive, and far more territory for a programmer. The SY77 could be glassy, acoustic, metallic, evolving, or aggressively synthetic. It was a machine for someone who wanted to construct the instrument inside the instrument. But depth has a cost that does not appear in the polyphony column. More architecture means more decisions. More decisions mean more time before a sound becomes a song. For a patient professional, Yamaha could be the more powerful kingdom. For a player who needed a polished piano, strings, drums, and a sequence tonight, the M1's narrower path was often the faster one. Roland's challenge is interesting because the company answered different parts of the M1 with different instruments. The D-20 arrived in 1988 with LA synthesis, an 8-track sequencer, a rhythm section, effects, and floppy storage. It is a legitimate integrated workstation rival, and another reason not to call the M1 the first without qualification. The JD800, released in 1991, moved in the opposite direction. Its panel was covered in sliders, inviting the musician to shape a complex digital sound by hand. With 24 voices, 5 normal parts plus a special part, and powerful effects, it was a premium sound design instrument. It did not include an internal song sequencer. The JV80 followed in 1992 with an expandable PCM sound platform and 28-voice polyphony, but again, no built-in song sequencer. It was a strong performance synthesizer that expected an external sequencing system. Only later did the JV1000 turn that family into a clearer workstation, using 8 phrase tracks plus rhythm and tempo tracks. Roland could compete in sound, control, and expansion. Korg's advantage was that the complete proposition arrived under one famous name. The Kurzweil K2000 entered in 1991 like a laboratory wearing a keyboard. It offered 24-voice polyphony, 16-part operation, a 16-track sequencer, floppy and SCSI storage, optional sampling, and VAST, Variable Architecture Synthesis Technology. VAST let programmers choose signal paths and combine sample playback with serious digital processing. The K2000 could grow with ROM, sample memory, storage, and studio requirements. Its acoustic and orchestral reputation made it attractive to professionals who wanted refinement and control beyond a factory pop palette. This was not the ordinary musician's quick purchase. It was expensive, deep, and designed to reward study. If the M1 was the popular monarch, the K2000 was the court's scholar, capable of more elaborate reasoning, but less likely to be found everywhere by accident. Ensoniq provides the historical correction and the strongest workflow challenge. The ESQ1 had already combined a playable synthesizer and an 8-track polyphonic sequencer in 1986. The later VFX SD and SD-1 line pushed the idea much further with a 24-track sequencer, event editing, quantize, song construction, floppy storage, expressive polyphonic aftertouch, and deep evolving sounds. The documented SD-1 manual describes 21 dynamically assigned voices. Later, 32 voice revisions also existed. 12-part multi-timbral use is commonly documented. Again, tracks, parts, and voices are different numbers. 24 sequencer tracks do not create 24 independent notes of polyphony. For arranging, Ensoniq could feel more like a dedicated composing environment than the M1. It offered the serious sequencer user more room and finer control. Its sound was expressive, sometimes strange, and often beautiful. But it did not produce one universally understood factory vocabulary on the scale of M1 piano, organ, and universe. Ensoniq may win the argument about sequencing. Korg won the argument happening on the radio. So why did the M1 become the king? Not because it won every category. Yamaha was deeper. Ensoniq offered more sequencer power. Kurzweil was more expandable and elite. Roland could offer more immediate control or a broader evolving PCM ecosystem. The M1 won the combination test. It was musical before it was explained. Its sounds were broad enough for a working player and distinctive enough for a producer. Its effects helped presets arrive polished. Its sequencer was limited but understandable. Its combinations worked on stage. Its price placed the workstation idea below the rarefied world of computer music systems. Most technology asks the customer to imagine what it might become after configuration. The M1 demonstrated the result on the first few keys. Press one key and hear Universe. Select the piano and hear a record waiting for a rhythm. Select the organ and discover that an imitation can become a new genre instrument. That immediacy created a feedback loop. More musicians bought M1s, so more records used M1 sounds. Listeners learned the vocabulary, so producers reached for it again. Availability became familiarity. Familiarity became style. Style became an era. The workstation concept kept growing. Later instruments expanded to 16 tracks, 16 parts, much larger polyphony, sampling, hard disk recording, touchscreens, software integration, and eventually complete production environments. But the basic gesture remains familiar. Sit at one keyboard, choose a sound, record an idea, add drums and bass, correct the performance, duplicate a section, change the tempo, replace a timbre, save the song, and continue later. Modern computers perform these operations on a scale the M1 could never approach. Yet the psychological breakthrough still matters. The machine said that composition, arrangement, sound selection, and production did not have to be separate rooms or separate people. Korg did not invent every tool inside the workstation. The M1 made the tools feel like one instrument. That is why its legacy is larger than a bright piano sample, and why those old presets still sound like the moment a keyboard became a studio. The Korg M1 was the king of 90s pop because it united two revolutions, recognizable sounds, and an approachable way to build a whole arrangement. Its rivals could be deeper, more expressive, or more powerful. The M1 was the one that made the future feel obvious. Which member of the court would you choose? The immediate M1? The hybrid SY77? The hands-on Roland? The powerful K2000? Or the sequencer-rich Ensoniq? Tell us in the comments. If this film made you hear those familiar records differently, give it a like and subscribe to NeuroSynth by AB Visual Studio. And tell us in the comments which instruments, studio technologies, or hidden chapters of music history you would like us to explore next. The next instrument is already warming up.